Welcome to Santos Brothers Eats.
Food worth mentioning. All right, so welcome everyone to Santos Brothers Eat. I'm here with my brother Jeff, Chef Jeff, and my name is Kenny. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, how's it going, Kenny?
Wonderful. And so this podcast, we are one of those brothers, actually. We're one of those sets of brothers and one of those many people that love to eat food. And we always talk about food, and we thought to ourselves, if we're going to be talking about it, why don't we tell other people? Because as the title implies, the food that we eat and the food that we talk about is food worth mentioning. So we're going to share a couple meals, some takeout, some that we've actually not so much me, that my brother Jeff has prepared at home, and we're just going to share that with you. And we invite you to not only partake in our food, especially the takeout food. We can't, have the food that we've made at home, but if you like what we're talking about, give us a little ring, and we can talk about that. We'll also leave the links and mention all the restaurants that we have in the descriptions or in all of the show notes. So we're going to talk about that just a little bit. Jeff, how long have you been a chef for now?
Seriously, I've been cooking, since about 1993, 91 maybe. So as a lot of my friends, and Ken knows especially, I actually got into cooking because of the classic show Three's Company. The lead actor, John Ritter, who played Jack Tripper, he was a chef, and for some reason that struck a bell with me. So I decided to pursue that career as a chef, and I went to school at George Brown College in Toronto, with a 2-year culinary management program. I actually apprenticed at the Harbour Castle Weston, and also at Canada's Wonderland. When I was there, we made all the food in the park. In the wintertime, we'd go in and make like lots of lasagnas. We'd roll the dough, make the dough for beef pies, enchiladas, make the taco sauce, and freeze them, like vac pack freeze them. And then when the park opened in the spring and summer, they would take the frozen lasagnas or stuff out and then bring it to the various restaurants would have them. They would defrost them, cook them, resauce them, and portion out to the customers. I know it sounds like it's a park, it's an amusement park, but there was also a VIP dining room on the main street of Wonderland. For those of you who know Wonderland, above, it was called Alporn, there was a private dining room, and when they had VIP guests from Kings Island or sponsors or partners, they would bring them up there, and they would serve them gourmet meals. And I was part of that team for about, I think half a summer, because then I would actually work in the park as well. So I did a lot of my cooking there at Wonderland and at Harbour Castle Weston. And me being a chef, my wife Diana loves the fact that she has a chef at home, and I make meals for her and for my family and friends when they come over. But we also do go out and eat a lot, as Ken mentioned.
Yeah, so if you ever look at Jeff's Instagram account, you're going to see that he does eat out a lot. Of course, during these times of lockdown and quarantine, we're practicing social distancing and being safe. But at the same time of not only being safe and making sure that we're not spreading the virus or contracting the virus, we're also making the effort to support local businesses, which is important as well. And I do want to point out, I also worked at Canada's Wonderland for about 4 years, and I just learned something. First of all, I had no idea that you guys were making the meals like before the season. I just thought those were from out. Like I thought you guys bought those. Like I didn't realize that was made,
Okay.
before the season. And I had no idea there was a VIP restaurant or a VIP lounge. And I worked there for 4 years, and I had no idea that you were even involved in. First of all, I didn't know there was one, and I didn't know that you were involved with it. So that is pretty funny to me. And this is, I worked there in the 90s. So we're talking like over 20 years later, I find this out. Jess, you've been cooking for, if I'm doing my math right, over 30 years or coming on 30 years, something like that. 91. Yeah. Oh, not quite 30. Well, we're getting there.
Getting there, yeah.
So, but we're going to talk about a couple meals today. We're going to talk about, like I said, a couple of takeout meals today. And again, we're being very responsible, practicing social distancing as we do that, but also making an effort to support all of our local businesses. And I'm going to talk about a place that some of you may have heard before. It's called Smokes, right? Is it called Smokes Poutinerie, Jeff?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so Jeff came by and visited and decided to bring over some takeout food because he was going over to Smokes. And I'm one of those guys that, as far as poutine goes, I like poutine, but I'm not a super fan. Some people are just super duper fans of poutine. And I'm one of those people, it's like, if I see it, I'll probably eat some because I love food. But if I never have a single bite of poutine for the rest of my life, I'll be fine. And actually, I'm just thinking some people, especially if they're outside of Canada, they don't know what poutine is. Jeff, why don't you explain that?
So basically, poutine is from it's from Quebec. It's a province that's east of Ontario. And basically, it's French fries with cheese curds. As most cheeses do, when they add when there's heat to them, they will stretch and melt. But the classical poutine from Quebec is French fries, cheese curds, and a nice rich gravy. So that's a classic French poutine right there.
So what do you guys think about that? French fries, cheese curds, and then a gravy on top. So what happens is the gravy melts the cheese on top of all the fries, and it all gets mixed together. And it is actually quite tasty. For whatever reason, I'm just not a big super fan of it. Like I said, I'm not a hater of it, but I'm not a super fan of it. There's a place called Smokes Poutinerie. There's a lot of poutine places, in the Toronto area, and that's where that's where we live in the GTA. That does all these different styles of poutine. Like even McDonald's during the summer has like the maple bacon poutine, which is poutine with maple and bacon, And so the one I'm talking about today is because I think, now that I think of it, Smokes Poutinerie has been around for forever and a day, but I hardly ever go. And you asked me what I wanted. I wanted the Korean. The Korean is basically it's a flat iron steak with some Korean barbecue sauce, some green onions, and of course it still has a squeaky cheese. I call it a squeaky cheese because when I lived in the States, that's what they called it. They called it squeaky.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's the cheese curds, a squeaky cheese, and then it also had sambal. What's sambal, Jeff? Do you know?
Yeah, sambal oelek is a chili sauce.
Okay.
Like sriracha is the new thing out there now, but the precursor to that was sambal. It's a bit thicker and actually has the seeds from the various peppers that they use to make it. I'm not a big hot, spicy person, so I've only had it like a very, very little bit, and to me that's like too hot. But that's what sambal oelek is.
Excellent. So this meal here, when you go get poutine, you either get a small or a large, and I don't know what size you gave me, but it was certainly a meal. Do you remember what size you gave me?
That was a medium.
That was there's three sizes. So there's
three sizes. Yeah.
And I was very pleasantly surprised. Again, I'm not someone that loves poutine, but I would get this definitely again. Actually, if I go back, or when I go back to Smokes, I'll probably go back again, but I will definitely get that again. I was really surprised at the flavor. The Korean barbecue sauce has some sweetness, and I love sweetness with my savory, especially if there's meat involved. That's just one of my favorite things is having that, and that was perfect with the Korean, and it was spicy. What I would recommend, if you're not into spice all that much, make sure you mix it all together, because otherwise you're going to get pockets of spice and then pockets of non-spice, and the pockets of spice are really going to be overwhelming. And I like spice a little bit more than Jeff, but I'm not too overboard. I'm not one of those guys that'll order, a tray of suicide wings or anything like that. And so definitely a super awesome meal I would recommend. And, if you want to go out to Smokes, they have, I don't know, at least half a dozen to a dozen different types of poutine, where there's like a butter chicken poutine, or there's probably a bacon one. There's all these different types, but I had the Korean, would definitely recommend that again. And I actually had it because usually you want to have poutine right when it's fresh. You know, when it comes out, the cheese is all melty and everything. And of course, you don't like older fries. Like even if fries are half an hour old, you don't really like them because if they're in a box or all steamed together, it just doesn't turn out well. I ended up, because I had eaten before you given me the food, I ended up eating this a little bit later. I had to reheat it. But even though I reheated it, it was still absolutely spectacular. I imagine, you know, if I was a poutine lover, I'd probably give it a 9 out of 10.
Nice.
If it was fresh, I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10 as a poutine lover, you know, just because I had it later. But as a non-poutine lover, I'll maybe knock that down to a 6. Still, but still, even with all that, I would still get it. Do you remember the price point around that? Because you're the one that bought that for me.
Yeah, it was about in the average between $12 and $15, if I remember correctly, for a medium.
For medium, and that is a meal. That, like, a lot of people think, it's fries and it's a side. No, poutine is not necessarily a side. I've ordered poutine as a side before, even a small poutine as a side. Like if you go to a restaurant, you have a burger and a side of poutine. I usually either can't finish it, or if I do finish it, I don't feel that good afterwards. And so that's how poutine is. Maybe that's why I don't have it that much, because I'd rather have like an actual, well, it is a meal, but I'd rather have like a burger instead of like, you know, poutine as my main. But that's what I'd like to talk about, that's what I wanted to mention. This is definitely food worth mentioning. Smokes Poutinerie, the Korean, between you know, up to $15 for this particular. And actually, I think that if you could probably share that. You could probably share that, even the medium. You don't even have to share the large. Even the medium is shareable if you wanted to do that.
Exactly right. And just a shout out to Smokes Poutinerie, because the day we got that was actually National Poutine Day. And Smokes, in junction with Cisco Canada, they did a buy one, give four during that day or during that weekend. And so what that was if you order poutine, then Smokes and Cisco will donate 4 pounds of potatoes to donate to local food banks. And I'm on their Twitter right now, and back in April 12th of this year, that was National Poutine Day or weekend, and one day they gave 10,000 pounds of potatoes to local food banks. So shout out to Smokes Poutinerie. So that's at Smokes Poutinerie and at Cisco Canada for that initiative. And again, like Ken mentioned before earlier, and during this time of the pandemic, there are a lot of people out there going hungry. So, you know, always do your part to donate at what you can. And this was a great incentive by Smokes Poutinerie to do that. Again, that's their buy one, give four campaign on National Poutine Day.
That's spectacular. And again, another reason to support local.
Yes.
We don't really need a reason, but this is just another reason to support local. I know many of us were a little bit timid about going out, but if you do it responsibly, then it's certainly you're doing your part. You're doing your part. Do it responsibly. Do your part. Make sure that you're practicing all the precautions, you know, if and when you do eat out. And coming up next, we're going to have Jeff talk about something that he made at home.
So what I made at home, I actually got a Tita Active Fry air fryer. As we mentioned before, I like French fries, but I don't really have a deep fat fryer at home. And friends of my wife Diana, they had an Active Fry from Tefal, and I've always been looking at an air fryer myself in the back of my head. But again, because we're in this time, we're quarantined, and I want to try more recipes at home, I finally bit the bullet, and we bought an Active Fry. And one of the first recipes I wanted to do was fried chicken. Now, my wife is gluten intolerant. She's not, she doesn't have a gluten allergy, but something in her system hates gluten. So I always try to make gluten-free alternatives. And I found some great recipes on gluten-free fried chicken. And I actually also went out and bought some gluten-free flour to try some more stuff later on. So basically what it is gluten-free flour, a basic chicken marinade. So I actually made buttermilk, which is 1 tablespoon of vinegar, and then top it off to make a cup of regular milk to make buttermilk. I let the chicken soak in that with some other spices. Then I made a mixture of seasoned gluten-free flour and cornmeal for extra crunch. So chicken was marinating overnight. Then when time came, I just breaded the chicken with the flour and cornmeal mix. in the active fry it went. And after about 25 minutes, the crust was nice and crispy. Chicken was cooked all the way through. And I also added some potatoes in the last 10 minutes of that to, make it a meal. But yeah, I'm amazed at how well the active fry went. Like I said, the chicken was still crispy.
So again, it's a Tefal active fry. And then
Yeah.
you mentioned it was 25 minutes. That sounds like a long time. Is that typically how long? That sounds like longer than a regular deep fry, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. Because
okay.
in a regular deep fried fryer, the temperature is like 350 degrees of hot oil. And the chicken's going down and it's being encompassed in hot oil. So hot oil compared to hot air is much hotter and will cook faster that way. So it is a long time, but for me, the time of cooking it were the time of, having oil just sitting around and disposing the oil properly. I don't mind that trade-off at all.
And it's probably
just a good trade-off.
It's just healthier for you.
Yeah,
so,
and that's the big thing too. It's healthier for you, air versus oil. And then with the chicken and the potatoes, I know a lot of carbs, but I also made gluten-free cornbread with that. And again, I had a cornmeal, and what made this cornbread more moister was the addition of cottage cheese. Diana likes a more softer cornbread as opposed to like a crumbly cornbread. And it was kind of funny because one of our local stores, Loblaws, had a good deal on either 2 tubs of sour cream or 2 tubs of cottage cheese or 1 and 1. We had a lot of sour cream in our house because of potatoes and other stuff. But sour cream isn't that, like 2 tubs is too much for us. And I asked Diana, do you eat cottage cheese? And she said, well, not really, but sometimes. And I said, okay. Then I was on Pinterest and I looked up cottage cheese recipes. And one of the first ones popped up was cottage cheese cornbread. And I knew right away, that's what I'm making.
Nice.
And I made it for Diana, and she said it was one of the best cornbread she ever had.
You said that Diana said was the best cornbread she's ever had. Is that right?
Yes, that's what she said.
Okay.
Again, because she likes the moistness of the cornbread, and it was the best cornbread she ever had. She said.
Would we be able to, do you remember the recipe, or the link to the recipe or something?
I do. If you have Pinterest, you could keep links or badges, they call them, or pins. Pinterest,
yeah,
of course,
they're
pins.
Called pins.
I will make sure to forward that to you for our listeners.
Absolutely, yeah. So if you want the best cornbread that a gluten-free eater has had in their entire life, right? Then you may want to check out our show notes because we'll make sure to have that. And then of all the food that Jeff has been talking about so far, when it comes down to the gluten-free fried chicken and the gluten-free cornbread, there are photographs of that on his Instagram account, and I'll be leaving links as well to that in the show notes. And then, you also ate out.
Yes.
Recently. Tell us a little bit about that.
So one of our favorite places to go is Kanto by Tita Flips. Tita Flips is Diona Joyce, and she does Filipino cuisine, but elevated to the next level. Diona Joyce is great. We first met her. I do comedy as a hobby, and she was one of our food vendors for our comedy show, and that's how we met Diona and Tita Flips in Kanto. On that day, we had Topsilog, and we also had what did we have? Ken, the beef one. What's it called?
The beef one? That's Topsilog.
Okay, what's the one with the pork then?
Tocino.
Tocinolog. Tosilog?
Yeah.
Tosilog, yes.
Okay.
Tosilog, yes.
So why don't we, before we even go in, and start explaining this food here, let's explain the name, because a lot of people won't understand, Tita Flips, what's the point of that name? Could you just go into that a little bit? Oh, and by the way, me and Jeff, we're both Filipino, so this is why we like this Filipino food. But talk about Tita Flips and the name.
So Tita Flips, basically, Tita is the Filipino word for aunt. And in most cultures, most of your parents' friends, they're your tita. No matter if they're related to you or not, they're always your tita. So, of course, Tita Flips is an homage to, your tita. And flips is, or may not be, a derogatory term for a Filipino, but flips is our sort of nickname. So Tita Flips is a good combination of the name of homage to a Filipino aunt. And Kanto, I'm not too sure about Kanto.
Don't know
Do you
where
know
that
what
name
Kanto?
goes.
Okay,
No,
so
don't know.
Kanto, yeah.
And
But
so
Tita Flips, that's where Tita Flips comes from.
that's where that name came from. And so let me explain a little bit about Tapsilog and Tosilog. So there's a popular meal in the Philippines that's this beef tapa, and Jeff will explain that a little bit. And then in the morning, it's a breakfast item, and you have that with rice and egg. And so
Mm-hmm.
the short form, and in Filipino and Tagalog, the name for an egg is itlog. And so you put the two of them together. It's tapa and itlog. And then I don't know where the S comes from. Maybe some of our Filipino friends would know better, but the name together is tapsilog. It's like, it's a tapa with the egg, and then the tocino is a pork dish, and basically tosilog is that pork with the eggs. But why don't you go ahead and start explaining that? Did you have both of those that day? You and Diana?
We ordered one of each, so we do share. And like Ken said, it's the beef is prepared in certain spices, and like Ken said, we're both Filipino, but unfortunately we don't cook Filipino dishes. Like we leave that up to our dad, or we go out for Filipino food. I know it's a sin, but it's one of those things where I never really cut up on Filipino cooking. Maybe I should, because of I have time now at home to catch up, but I know I probably won't have the same finesse as people that have been doing it for years and years. So both the tapa and the tocino are marinated in different various spices to give them both a unique flavor. I find that the tocino, I like a bit better than the tapa because I like more sweetness in my food. What about you, Ken? Which one do you prefer?
I like tocino more than tapsilog, but I don't get to have the tapa as much. Actually, the last time I even had tapa, I think I was actually in Manila. Like it was like, I don't get it a lot here in Canada. But I like them both. And for those of you that haven't tried it, it is, and both the tapa and the tocino, the beef and the pork, they taste a little bit different, but they're both savory and sweet. And it's something that I love to eat for breakfast. If I could have that every day, I would.
Mm-hmm.
I could have tapsilog or tosilog every single morning. I certainly would. And so,
and don't forget langonisa as well.
And langonisa, that's a Filipino sausage. And again, it's a pork sausage. And again, that has some sweetness to it.
Yes.
I find a lot of Filipino dishes, especially the morning breakfast dishes, have a lot of sweetness mixed with the savory with their meats, which is something that I absolutely love.
Oh, yeah.
Love that.
It's amazing. I for those of you that like comedy, Joe Coy, he's a Filipino comic from Los Angeles, I believe. And I think myself and Ken and most Filipinos who grew up in North America are second generation Filipinos, because what our parents gave us for breakfast when we were young, we thought that was normal. And that's what Joy Coy said. A Filipino breakfast is any meat from the night before with rice and an egg. That's breakfast. And I believe that's where all these, like Tosilog and Langanisalog, that's where it came from. It's basically whatever's left over from dinner, add rice and egg, and that's your breakfast.
And, oh wow, yeah, that makes that's awesome. That's really good. What would you?
And then with with our meals was achara, which Diana loves. It's a Filipino green papaya relish. So there's green papaya, which is papaya, which is green, and it's naturally green. It doesn't mean that it's unripened, but it's naturally green. It's a bit bitter, and with some carrots and maybe some sweetness like a fruit, like raisins, and it's like a relish. It's pickled. So when you mix that in with the rice and the sweetness or the savoriness of either the beef or the tocino or the langanisa, it's a good balance of all flavors together.
So you can have that with ketchup then,
It's a good one. Oh, yeah, ketchup too.
Okay,
it's good.
So that's a thing that maybe not everyone does, but when I'm having when me and Jeff, when we're having a meat with rice and eggs, we'll probably put some ketchup on there. That's just what's going to happen. The achara is awesome. You know, I don't get to have that a lot. Again, the last time I had achara was probably in Manila. So it's been a while since I've had that. It's not, it's awesome. But it's not something that I get to have a lot. And so was that just kind of like on the table, or that just came with the meal, or what?
Well, no, remember, this was still during pandemic, so it was takeout.
Oh, that's right. It's takeout.
But each meal does come with a small side of achara.
Very good.
As well. Yeah.
How much was, do you remember ballpark how much that was?
I'm trying to remember. I think around between $15 and $18. And it was a big meal.
And that was each, right? Was that for each of them?
Yeah, it was for each. Yeah.
Big meals. All right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we're talking, this is not street food. This is next level up, right?
Yes.
This is next level up. That's what Tito Flips is. That's not what Tito Flips is. That's what Kanto is.
Kanto is, but Tito Flips it's called Kanto by Tito Flips. So she actually has that container at Market 707 at Bathurst and Dundas. However, she's opened a sit-down restaurant. I know the timing is bad, but we're wishing her luck. Right in the Junction. Junction in Toronto is sort of Bloor and High Park area. Sorry, Bloor and Dundas area. But we'll give you the website. And if you do order from Kanto, you can either pick it up from either the original location at Market 707 or in the Junction area. Nice. And we both can't wait to actually sit down in her new restaurant. And we wish her the best.
What would you give? I mean, I'm not going to have you rate your own food with this for the gluten-free chicken, but what would you rate on a scale of 1 to 10? First the tapsilog and then the tosilog. First the beef, then the pork.
For me, like I said, I prefer the sweetness. So for the tapsilog, I give it an 8.
Okay.
And then for the tosilog, I give it a 10. I love tocino. And even though the egg, because we had to transport it, wasn't as fresh or runny as usual, it was still good. The mixture with that, the rice, the tocino, and the chata, always delicious. Always delicious.
The way you think about this is that we got a Filipino chef just said that he had a 10 out of 10 meal at a place called Kanto. You probably want to go and try that. Again, that's the tosilog. That is the pork one. And you get that at Kanto. And I will definitely make sure to leave that information in the show notes because I'm sure that other people will want to try that.
Yeah. And another shout out during this pandemic, Kanto, ever since the pandemic started, they've actually been feeding the healthcare heroes at various hospitals in Toronto area. I'm just on their Facebook page now. I know they were at St. Mike's, they were at Sunnybrook, they were Princess Margaret, Scarborough General Hospital, but they've been feeding healthcare workers over here. Last week, we dropped off over 280 meals to our hashtag healthcare heroes. And if you want to help them out, just go to cantocares.ca and we'll provide the link to them. But, it's a lot of restaurants in Toronto, and I'm sure the whole world are helping to feed our healthcare heroes during this time. And they're just doing a small part in doing it. But, bravo to them. Kudos to them for doing this for our nurses and all healthcare workers out in the city.
So it's not just about having good food. It's also about supporting local, because when you support local, you support the healthcare workers. When you support local, you feed locals. So, Smokes Poutinerie, they're feeding locally, to those less fortunate, but then also Kanto, they are feeding locally, but they're feeding the heroes in the front line. So great, just another reason to support local again. During this crisis, during the lockdown, during the pandemic, we want to do this responsibly, and we want to make sure we're taking all the precautions, but we also don't want to eliminate them, because if we don't support local, they will not be around when it's time to open things back up again. Mm-hmm. And that's important to remember. And so that is it when it comes to the food that we feel like is worth mentioning this week. Next week, we will be back with more food that is worth mentioning.
In the words of Julia Child,
people who love to eat are the best people. All right, everyone, take care.
All right, have a good day.
All right. How do you think that went, Jeff? You've been listening to Santos Brothers Eat.
Food worth mentioning.